Hello, everybody. It's 1 o'clock Central Daylight Time. So I'm here, and so are you. Some of you are already in the chat. I already had 10 people ask very interesting questions, and then on a whim, I went over just to check and see if anybody else had added in the list because I garner all those up together about an hour before the program. And yeah, one more person to come through with a pretty interesting question. So we're going to look at that. Um, to do a little bit of housekeeping before we even get going. No, I don't do Akashic Records. And the first time I ever worked with anyone with Akashic Records, he was reading mine and he was apparently doing a lovely job doing it. And it's not that I don't believe in it, but one of the questions I asked him, he said, bring in some questions you have so we have a base to work from. And I asked him, I said, could I have been backdooring into the Akashic Records without all of the meditation and the understanding the guardians and going past the librarians and all this stuff that they do, that I read that they did? And he looked horrified and he was like, well, no, I mean, we we have been told, how to access this information. And I was like, great. So we did my whole reading. And at the end, he looked up at me and he smiled kind of sheepishly and he started laughing. And he said, they just told me that you've been backdooring your way into the Akashic Records the whole time you read. There are things you read that are very Akashic Records, like past lives and things like that, which I'm sure are adjacent to Akashic Records, but not completely. And I will but I appreciate it. And I think, if you want to do someone who does formal Akashic Record stuff, more power to you. But I am not that person. And I had it verified by a man who is very, very well, uh, very, very well known in that community and does a lot of it. And his stuff so far for me has been very valid. And everyone I've dealt with him, it's been very valid. But he hasn't been out doing his Akashic Records thing because he's also a professional in another field and very much in demand for that. So that answers the Akashic Records question. The other one is please try to limit yourself to one question per person who's in the feed because I've gotten comments from people about there are certain people that seem to want to, they ask a question, they get an answer, and then they want to uh, contact you. They want you to go into all this other more pertinent information. I would assume anyone who is watching a show that's going to last about an hour, and unless the show was reading that person, which I have done shows with the person's permission of reading that person, um, that it's going to be a very superficial reading. And quite honestly, sometimes I see things when I'm reading people and I'll hint to them that they need to get back to me. And I'm not hunting money, although I like my money. And if you do want to get in touch with me, here's how you do it. This is my email. And I'll be glad to arrange readings. I have different sorts of readings set up. But right now, I'm doing personal readings for the last 6 months of 2024. Besides, I mean, it lays out the whole 6 months. And I think the next 6 months are going to be so intriguing. Knowing how you fit in it could be very, very interesting. So just letting you know, that's the email, crystaldirections.nancyjean@gmail.com. Now I got the businessy part out of the way. Okay, let me see. Get this one quick go away. Okay. All right. Now to the questions. And I'm going to start with one of the ones that was very interesting to me, and it's in two parts because it's just got too many words. When you send a question to me on my YouTube link and I transfer it over to StreamYard, I can only take 200 characters. So we're going to read the whole question. BC Mom. I've had a vision of a young Celtic witch and who works with nature energy, heals and weaves magic into the world. and she came into my awareness. I've also seen a picture of her in old age as a crone. I heard the name Bridget. Is she a new guide or an ancient wisdom that works with me? If yes, does she help me? Thank you very much. And yes, she's a new guide. If you're seeing her that vividly, BC Mom, um, that means that she means to become part of your life. It's like when the elementals kidnapped me off and I got to go to a big elemental celebration. And then they came 2 weeks later and said, no, you didn't get the whole message we were giving you. I went back and met with them again. I can see them all very vividly. I can see where we met. I can see writing on Cecil. And I finally did understand what they wanted me to do. And they wanted me to make people more aware of the elementals, because this was in 2023, because in 2024, this is their year. They're emerging. People are becoming more aware of them. People who garden, people who are out in the world. People are finding healing is better if you do it out in nature, which is their realm, and they are from our earth. And so we need them as we're beginning to go into a cycle that heals earth. We need the energy of the elementals. And I have some I talk to. I have fairies that now live in my house. They hang around. And even my daughter finally said, I think I saw one of them peeking around the corner out of your office. But when my daughter thought she heard voices, so she wanted to see if I'd left my computer on. And she walked to, it's not a door. There's not a solid door there. It's just an entryway. And she said she felt herself being pushed back. So she knew it was a place she wasn't supposed to go. But, be careful what you invite into your life, because if you invite an element into your life, you don't say, oh, I'm curious about what this is. Come on, let it in. Use your intuition. Use your most basic who you are, spirit, and as you're reflecting out into the world. Because there's the old wives' tale, if you invite in a ghost, you can't make it leave. And my daughter, who is a true medium, but she doesn't use it very much. We used to live in a high-rise that was full of older people. And it had been there being that sort of a high-rise for 15 years. So she could see them walking around the hallways, and there are people who died in there, and they couldn't figure out how to get out. And she used to stop and sort of direct them to the light and tell them where to go. And we had a neighbor who was blind, legally blind, and couldn't see much of anything. And he called me up one day and he said, where's Casey? And I said, well, she's at work. Where would you expect her to be, Al? And he said, I need to talk to her. And I said, okay, I'll tell her when she gets home. So when she got home, I said, I think Casey had gone over before, and Al had a very aggressive cleaning lady, and she used to unplug his stuff sometimes. And that she didn't mean to. It was like they got caught on the vacuum cleaner or whatever. So his things wouldn't work. Well, he wouldn't call me to go help him because this was before my knees were fixed. And I could barely walk and take care of my own stuff. So Casey came home and I said, Al wants to talk with you. She said, okay. So she went over and our doors were like side by side. She went in his door and she was gone. She was gone for quite a while. Finally, I called her up and I said, you okay? And she said, oh, you're not going to believe this, Mom. I'll tell you when I get home. She said, I got one more. And I went, one more? What? I couldn't imagine how many plugs could have been unplugged. And when she came home, she told me that the spirits in the hallways had realized they could talk to Al and he would respond. And he didn't know they were dead because he didn't know didn't have a body. And so he invited 3 or 4 of them in to visit him one night during the week. And now they wouldn't leave. And they kept talking to him at night and they kept, being around his place. So he was going crazy. So one of them said, oh, we're not going to talk to that Casey person because she makes people go away. And he thought, Casey, got to find out what Casey knows about these people. So that's why he called her. And he did not know she was a medium. And Casey said she got all of them out except one who said he wasn't going anywhere. And she said, I have sage in my apartment. And she started to go towards the door to go get the sage out of a percent. And as it ended up, I went over the next day. Now, saging something I could do. I saged Al's place out. And I told him that unless you can reach out and touch someone, that he has no way of knowing if they're there. And he apparently, his whatever spidey sense he had was gone. So he thought they were real people. But he kept saying, I kept telling him to leave. Why wouldn't they leave? And I said, because if you invite them in, they don't have to leave. And I'd always heard that wives' tale, and I thought, how are you ever going to know that unless you stupidly invite them in? Well, but BC mom, I think this woman, and you got her show, Bridget, sounds absolutely brilliant. And I think she's probably speaks to you in either a Welsh or an Irish tone with that kind of an accent. And I think she's there to help you. And you can ask her. Just ask her before you go to sleep at night, or if you're sitting in the quiet of your house by yourself, just ask her, can you give me more information about why you're here and what we can do together? And she'll let you know. Okay? I think she's completely benevolent, and there's nothing you should worry for about her. Okay, now we're going back to the questions in the order I got them. Puka Rabbit. With all the flooding, rain, tornadoes, and recent weeks in the Midwest states, will it significantly impact the U.S. food supply this year? Not so much that we're able to get a hold of within the U.S., but I think it's going to start to limit some of what we can export. I think this is definitely a warning to people about, you move in during the good years and then you find out the bad years come. That was something when they first settled in the Dakotas after the Civil War. We were in an incredibly good weather cycle. And it was in the 1890s and early 1900s. And then, of course, it built up to the Dust Bowl of the Depression in the 30s that we found out that the weather is not always what it was yesterday. So there's a lot of astrologers, if you watch any of the people who do long-term forecasts or compare things to prior cycles. I watch Pam Gregory a lot. I watch Steve Judd, although Steve's not been on much recently. There's several different, there's astrologers tend to pick certain things they really like to do. And like Andre enjoys working with politics and the personalities of politics. Other astrologers look at worldwide patterns. There used to be an astrology group, and there were 3 of them, and they'd meet and they would all each come up with what they saw coming up for the month. They're very good, but just there's an astrologer in Australia, and so you kind of get a different view because he was from Europe, he was from France, and now he lives in Australia, so he learned to speak English, learned his French accent has an Australian accent. It's kind of wild, but he's very good. You can go find him. But just look at some astrologers, and if they don't depress you, if they depress you or they try to scare you, I turn them off. Because what they should be doing is informing you. And we have a lot of major planets moving into places that they have not all been in those places this way before that we can find in recorded history. So it's interesting. And as far as the food supply goes, I'll do a reading with that in the garden because it's about food. We'll look at the garden. I got it set up. I just don't have the camera on it. Here we go. There we go. And as you know, the garden can tell time. But what I'm going to ask the garden is for the next year and the food supply and the weather. Well, it's all very fundamental and close to our heart because it's all in the center. And yeah. Okay, my camera went away on my computer. Um, Winter, spring, summer, fall. We're in the summer. Yeah, it's been a hard spring, and the body is in air. I'm going to try and put all these together before I talk. This is saying we need to ground our thoughts and keep ourselves focused. And we also have mental actions, our ability to handle with things and deal with them the best mentally. The, the, the grounding stone is between earth, water, and air. It's mostly in air. And when it's there, it's mental actions are the path to our abundance. Water is grounding change because it's just tipping its toe into changing into long-term patterns. And more is going to be brought forward, but I think we're able to deal with it because our mind, our mental powers are in the earth, and there will be final thoughts that can bring forward to the solution. A lot of it's coming from the fact that we kept thinking it's always going to be the way it's been, and we haven't prepared for maybe having to make massive changes. Our spirit is actually mostly in water, and some of the changes that have been going on are really starting to take place, and we need to learn to live with them because our clarity is clearly in water. We have everything we need to survive this, to go through this change. But you got to remember, some of the changes we're having in how our food is produced is like the $12 billion that was lost by the food producers in Florida because they didn't have the workers to um, pick their crops. And of course, they said it's those people we don't want here, so we're going to send them back. So, and their state was the most vigorous in enforcing that, and they were the ones that lost $12 billion. Instead of sitting down and doing what could have been done to create a framework for those people to be here. We know what we need to do. What this is telling me is we know what we need to do. We've had chances in this spring to figure out. We had a chance to pass immigration laws that make sense. I'm take immigration very personally because my parents were immigrants. Now, they're immigrants from Canada, and I know a lot of people don't think that's a big deal. But it's a big deal when you leave your country and come somewhere else. It's a huge deal. And it's not a small sacrifice, and it's not because it's so much easier. Trust me, it's much easier to stay in one place. But I think what it's going to do, Puka Bear, is it's going to make us rethink how we deal with our food supplies and what we grow. And the other thing we're going to have to think about is because the breadbasket of the rest of the world, the real wheat areas was in Ukraine, that will have been offline for 2 years now. So there are a lot of parts of the world that cannot grow their own food. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't. And we're going to be backed into a corner if we're part of the human race. And how do we take care of these problems? And the stone that was so much in the air of the body, the information's there. We know what we need to do, and all the rest of the stones line up that we know what we need to do, and we've seen when we try to do it a different way, it doesn't work so well. So we're going to be okay. You're not going to starve to death. And quite honestly, the food prices are not higher because we have not really felt the impact of what isn't there. And it is the food supply chains. And it's the fact I just saw a scary graphic and I didn't pass it on because I don't know how true it is. But it really comes down to like 4 major companies own everything in our country. And as long as that's the truth, that's what we busted up in the 1890s. That was the robber barons and the Rockefellers and all those guys. And they all still have lots of money. They got broken up, and it's the monopolistic way supply chains are set up that's going to break. And that is That's one of the things that a lot of the astrologers have said. How food's distributed and information is distributed is going to change radically. So, and here someone wants to, it, how can I stop sabotaging myself through procrastination? Okay, we're going to do a yes no question on, I think you're perfectly capable of this, Roni, but I'm going to lay some cards for you to look at this. And then I'm going to tell you a thing. I got to a point where I probably find this hard to believe, but I just stopped doing everything for a while. And in part, I needed to do that to figure out what I really wanted to do. But then it was really hard to kick it into gear and go do something. So we're going to go look at camera. It's so much easier to do this in Zoom. You have to pick three. No, okay. Roni. Is Roni at a point in her life where she can break from her procrastination problem? And then I'll tell you what I went out and did. And it worked. So can Roni break out of procrastination problem? Well, yes, you are at a point of much endings. You've got 3 10s on here. 3 10, there's only 5 in the whole deck. And there's 72 cards, and out of the 5 cards I pulled, you got 3 10s. And they're positive. It says you need to find a way to assess how to move forward, because when the Knight of Swords there, he's dashing off and moving forward. Part of it is part of you doesn't want to. You're in the process of learning what to lay down, what to hold on to, the 10 of Cups. And you're questioning your own judgment all the time. And that's stopping you from moving towards the Wheel of Fortune, which is your other 10. 10s mean endings, girl. This has got to end. These 2 cards are great. But this card is the one that I want to talk to you about. And I'm going to pull it and come back on camera and tell you what I've found in my life works when I get to those points where don't ask me to make another decision. It's like when people say, how are you? And I think it's a trick question. You need to find a way to come to a point with more judgment, deal with things. Judgment is when all the things rise up and you kind of get a new birth in life. If you look at some of the cards, the bodies are actually rising out of the ground. It's a way to build off. Dumping the 10 of Wands is which you get rid of your old burdens and bringing in the new 10 of Cups. And judgment will help you do that. Now, when I would get locked in that place, and I'm probably being overly sympathetic because I know exactly what she's talking about, I found, and you can find this, another thing you get to go hunt and find on your own on YouTube. There's things, and they'll talk about making goals, and I'll tell you the one thing not to do. They'll say go do something you need to do. Well, what I would do is I would write a list that was so long of what I needs to do that I would, by the time I finished writing the list, besides having a cramp in my right hand from writing it out, I would just be bowled over. There's no way, I didn't even know where to start. So where you start is to pick a simple task for each day. And if you can accomplish that task, then you'll find it easier to add on to other tasks. And after I fell down in December and really hurt my legs and was totally thrown back to having to use cane and everything, I didn't realize how badly it played with my brain. I'm sure if I went back and looked at shows that I was doing at the time, I could tell you. But I finally found one thing. I said I needed to get up every day because I'd gotten terrified to go outside the house because what if I fell down again? And I going out and trying to get around with the cane's also awkward. So I just quit going anywhere. So finally, I made it a point of finding something I wanted to do or something I wanted to go see or some task I could accomplish on my own. And by this time, I didn't need to use the cane all that much. It was literally a cane as a crutch, and it was becoming that. So I started a walking meditation thing from Daily Ohm. And it's only 5 minutes a day. And I would go out and I'd walk in nature and listen to this lovely lady test a different part of my consciousness while I walked. So all I had to do was walk and listen. And after about a week and a half of that, then the next thing was like, oh, I've been meaning to get all the yarn put together for my knitting projects, and because they were all sort of strewn in one corner of my room. So I went ahead and I spent a part of an afternoon, and it was something when I would look at that stack of stuff, I'd go, oh God, there's no way I'm going to get that organized. And I organized it in a couple of hours. But I had been successful. So each time I was good to myself and I achieved something, I would, Roni, I would pay myself back. And when food was always your motivator in my life, and being on keto, I had to pick the things I really wanted to have around so that I could treat myself to something. And after doing this for a few months, what I've ended up doing is treating myself to a much happier, better life. But once you find one thing you can do, and don't write a list of 100 things I'd like to do, find the one thing that you can do that day, and then the next day, and then the next day. And I have a friend who got herself out of the same sort of self-sabotaging point of procrastination by, first of all, she quit thinking about it as procrastination. She was just letting the universe find the time for it. And then she wrote up a weekly thing, which she had a thing she did every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday. I'm not that organized. That kind of a list would make me nuts, but maybe that's perfect for you. So I would go look on YouTube and put in things about procrastinating. There's a really good therapist who has a lot of videos out there named Marissa Peer, and she talks about the subject matter that's in her things, and she believes that people shouldn't spend years getting better. She believes in quick, working on quick fixes and things you can do right now. And her name is Peer, Marissa, Marissa. And I enjoy listening to her stuff. And actually, her suggestion of pick a thing you can do, pick a thing that you can do that will break the ice. This is just breaking the ice so that your life can move forward. And you have all my sympathies because I've been there and done that. And the next question that came out of the things is, oh man, Matt Hoop. Okay. I'm going to do 2 lines for you. One is getting a new job, staying where you are, and one is getting a new job, moving. Okay. I'm going to put you back on the table. Okay. And then maybe I'll throw, if those don't give us really good answers, maybe I'll throw in the garden. But I know I'm close to someone else who's looking for new work, and it's really tough because they're in a computer field where they've always been able to just walk out and find something, and this time it's a little bit different. But election years are never good years to be unemployed in because nobody wants to make a decision. They don't know what's going to happen with the election. Let's get this all straight, less wrinkly. Manhood. First line is staying put, we find work there, and second line is we find work elsewhere. Let's find work at home. No, this clearly says You need to move, and you need to move to a place where you'd be happier living. And then this is moving out of state. And neither one of them gives me an absolute yes on what's going on. You have better chances in out of state because of connections. But this is what I was telling you. Just right now, people aren't getting in each other's boats. The Wheel of Fortune's turning against you. But this also tells me the same things these two cards did. You want to move on. You want to get away from where you are. You don't want to stay where you are. And I think you may need to relook at your resume and figure out a new angle to put your job skills at. And so we're going to throw the stones and see if we get a time, because Tarot's terrible at time. That's why that's one of the things that when I told the universe, okay, I'll build your damn garden, give me the guidance, but make sure, my one part was I wanted it to have time in it. So this is winter, spring, summer, fall. This is where we are right now. Fall is going to be kind of a long, dusty summer, but it's good. And I can tell you right now, you're going to find the job lead through someone you've worked with before, because this is all past. Fire is past things in this life and the ancestors. And this says clarification comes from dealing with your past. That's why I told you I think you need to relook at your job skills. And I know Madhu, and I know she's got some really great skills. So I'm not saying go find something that's not there. It's there. And then your clarification is use ideas from things that have happened in your past and your past life to move forward. Your spirit is between the fire. It says thoughts from the past are clouding your new and enlightening ideas, and then you've tipped yourself into restate. And restate says you're going in the right direction, but you just need to be a lot clearer about what you want. You just can't. You kind of have to not just say, I just want any job. You have to really say the kind of job that you really, really, really want. And your thoughts are between the past and which is break from previous patterns and learn from experience. There's something hiding if you really reevaluate your resume. Or I don't know if if you can find someone to sit and talk with it about. They're going to point out things to you that you're not really paying attention to in your resume that's going to bring this job about. You're going to find out about the job in the early fall. You're going to be clearly set into it by winter. And you need to emphasize more of the creative things you did. The time you solved the problem or you came up with a new way of looking at things. Madhu, that's what's missing in your resume, I think. Or I feel, because I don't think, because I haven't seen your resume. I don't know. And this is the body, and the body is in water. And it says you're getting help from all the grounding elements you've had, but you'll be clearly sucked into this job in the winter. But it's going to show up by late summer, early fall. And I hope that helps. I know when you're looking, it's frustrating because every day screams no. And that's not what we want to have happen. We want a yes. And I want a yes for you too. I should have left it on the table. Sarah Broyles from Back 40 Studios. Will genealogy trip to Tennessee be successful for me? Okay. We're going to look. We're going to look at what you got going there, girl. Okay. that was not a good shuffle. I didn't have the angle right, so we'll try that one again. You're going to work really, really hard. I think you're going to be very frustrated. Let me see. What's the work about? Okay, I saw your trip in two parts. At the beginning, you're going to be looking for some balance and information. You're not going to be able to find it in the sources you think that there are. There are going to be things you're going to find out about your family or you didn't know. It's going to be kind of interesting. That's going to send you on a new path. We're going to have to dig in a different way. It's going to lead you in a new direction from the one you wanted to start with. You're going to be fine. You're going to find out something you believe in your family is absolutely not true, and you have to completely realign how you see them. You're going to have to view your family with new eyes. And there's some part of you, this one means you're not going to be in a happy place. There's some part of you that knows this old battle's back there, and you really know what you're finding is the truth, but looking at it's going to be hard. I don't know what your family was up to in Tennessee, but I hope that's not true. I hope I picked up on someone else's trip. Let's see. We're going to see what the overall outcome for you is, because we can go back and find out things about our family that are not our proudest moments, but that doesn't mean. So I'm going to pull a crystal oracle on what's going to be the outcome of your whole trip. New inspiration. It's beautiful. That's a long, complicated quartz crystal right there. And for you, that means I love these cards. I think they're so good. New inspiration. This medicine cleanses out and brings energy and vitality to any situation or person. This cluster of many crystals growing together is the same base as your foundation. And what you will learn from this is energy and recharging, cleaning up the environment, cleansing the energy field, and providing new inspiration and new ideas. And the message from the diva that's the earth goddess that controls this. You are in a time of deep cleansing and have new inspirations and stamina coming to you. You're being asked to clear out any old energy so that new vibes can make their way in. Once your energy has been cleaned, it will be the perfect time for you to refocus your energy and keep the old ideas that work that can be completed. You may also have new ideas of inspiration flowing as you go through this rush of energy surges. It encourages you to make the most of every opportunity. If you're not balanced and aligned, most of the opportunities will feel scattered, unmotivated, and have a lack of vision. It's extremely important to take the time to cleanse and ground yourself. If you have a busy life and a schedule, your energy should be focused on things outside of yourself, then you can easily cause you to get burnout and exhaustion. Work with this quartz cluster in mind to align you to the energies and ideas that are being offered to you that make you have whole new vibrations and a new world to enter. So I think that's probably right. I know that digging around in my family history, there's some very interesting things there. And maybe you already know about them. Maybe you're aware of them. Maybe it'll confirm it for you. Maybe it'll make it clearer. I have no idea. I don't think I think it's something you suspect, but I don't think it's maybe something you wanted to like face today. Okay, the next two I don't need to be on the table for, so we can get off it once and for all and talk about things. Okay. Okay, this is I get this from people. They'll get a big download, they'll think it's clear where they ought to go and how they ought to move and where they ought to be, and then it disappears. And they're like, was that some sort of a time frame? No, it's set into your psyche, and it will reappear gently as you need to understand it. Um, and there are people who go through downloads and their whole world just changes right that at that time. That is not the most common way. What you're looking at, Kathy, is the most common way, because way too many of us have stuff that's part of our general life pattern that we need to learn to understand and get a hold of. And there's not a time frame to it. There is the fact that we do have free will. And if something is brought forth to you, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to go with it. And you may take a little time to stand back and say, is that where I really want to be? But you lead right now, Kathy. I think you're just in that resting period. The one thing I will tell you can do is before you go to sleep at night, tell them you want further enlightenment, that you're not rejecting it by not thinking about it, that they need to make the visions clearer for you again. Okay, and this is the same sort of question, actually. Spacey Angel, you're the one that I picked up just before we came on air. I keep seeing the numbers 5 and numbers reduced to 5 everywhere. What is the direction I should take with this message? Well, if you don't know numerology, 5 is the number of chaos or change. And it's so funny you mentioned the 5s, because I was talking to a reader yesterday and we were trying to work something out, because we had an appointment and I had to get a new mouse, and I found a purple one. Isn't that cute? And so we couldn't schedule the thing yesterday afternoon because the mouse came yesterday. But he kept saying, I'm so sick of seeing the number 5. And I said, well, you know what it means. And he does. 5 means change. If you pull out the tarot cards that have 5s in them, 5 of Cups is a guy grieving over change. 5 of Wands is people fighting for their own element and not really fighting for anything else. It's just kind of a spacey, chaotic number. 5 of Coins is the people tossed out on their ear out in the snow walking past the church. And the 5 of Swords, a lot of people say it means winning at all costs. I've never seen it that way. I've seen it at a time where we need to reflect back in our life and decide what skills and tools we want to take forward with us. But 5 in the tarot for sure always means something's changing. Something's moving on, and you're either not paying attention or you need to pay more attention. In his case, his life is changing. There are a lot of things happening around him that are bringing around some 5 type change. And I don't know how happy that makes you about facing change, but I tell you, everybody's going to be seeing 5s because we are going into such a time of rapid change. Can you believe that we're like 2 weeks away from the 4th of July? It seems like we were just having our New Year's parties. I mean, I can't believe how fast things are moving, and yet some things seem to take so much time and never get done. It's a very, very energetically confusing time. And with that, Spacey Angel, you're in exactly the right place. Praise 5s. My daughter's a 5. And you can throw that girl in the worst piece of chaos and she can change it and make it straight, make it look okay. And that's a skill unto itself. And maybe that's what you're at. But I think, what direction should you take with that message? Listen to your heart and move forward with your own spirit. And we're going to go back and start looking through the questions because I have not looked at the chat at all. Okay, I see one I'm going to mark. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about that one. I saw one. Okay. It's really. Okay, and there's one more in here about somebody and their partners are not getting along. It was all written in bold letters. Oh, okay. Bridget G. I'm going to look up here and see. Hi, Angla. Angla's country is going through a change. Finland being part of NATO now. I'll try to figure out if I can answer that. Quickly, let's see. Okay, we're going back to the beginning. Okay, we're going to do these. These are going to be quick fire. When my pride, what does your life look like when your writing project's done? I'm not going to put these down on the table. I'm going to put them down in front of me, and I'm going to hold them up so you can see them and describe them. And Nessa's question is, when my writing project is done and published later this year, what does my life look like? Okay. That's a two-part question. Will your thing be published? Yes. How good. And what will your life look like? Oh, you're going to be so glad it's done. You can't stand it. We're going to start there. This is what your life's going to look like. The burden's over and you're happy. You're going to feel free like a kid, like I can go do anything. You're going to be joyous in your own heart, and you're going to be free and unburdened, but you need to watch how you feel so free and unburdened that you don't focus on other things, because you're going to hand this project in on the 10th month. It will not be published by the end of the year. It will be published within a year, which means between now and next summer. And part of it is it's going to be handed back to you to do some more work with it. And that's going to upset you because you're handing it in thinking, I'm done. So I think when you get to the time frame, I see 10 is really big for you. So I think this October, you're going to hand it in. By next October, you're going to be free of it and really free of it, Ness. And I don't know if that's unrealistic, but if I'm not seeing it right, but when you hand it in this last time and you think it's done, there's going to need to be more done on it. And sorry about that, because nothing pisses me off worse than re-editing. We're going down and hide. Wait a minute. I got to get rid of Spacey. Keep forgetting. Okay. And will I be successful in finding and retrieving a treasure for my attorney client in one of his sites we are working on? I think that's a we are, not a we're. Okay. Will Carl be successful in retrieving the treasure for his client? You too got the two tens, 10th month, and you got transition where everything completely changes. Yes, it's not going to be a smooth ride, and part it's because of your client's behavior. He gets emotional about things, but yeah, you're going to be successful. But it'll be October. Mm, okay. My partner and I are going through a rough patch. Will we succeed in saving our relationship? Okay. Oh dear. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad it came out like this. Yes, you actually are figuring out what you need to do to make your relationship grow forward. And this is people being happy in the same place. You're rekindling the real emotional ties the two of you had. You both are sort of figuring out that being in a relationship is not always going to be bliss by any means, but you're beginning to review your relationship more as a partnership. Yes, it's going to be very successful. By October, this is going to be kind of something we went through. Okay. SSDI getting approved in 2024. Okay. Yeah, it's going to get approved. It really, you need to focus on whatever actions you can take to push it forward. Yes, you are dealing with a bureaucracy, and yes, there are people in their little halls that have their rules. That's the ones you got to go with. But it shows you being freed finally to begin to pursue your own paths and being happy. So the way I would put those together is this is the one you can work on right now. You need to quit crying over it wasn't here this day, it wasn't here that day. You just need to take whatever positive actions you can. Remember what I said about fives are always about change? This is your crying over the spilt wine or milk or whatever's in those cups. You turn that card around and you can do that. That's what your will can do. And then you recognize what you have left on the top and you get what you're supposed to get. I hope it comes through. Hi, and my name is Nancy Jean, not Norma Jean. Norma Jean was Marilyn Monroe, and I never made that kind of money. Do you recommend? Do you recommend ask permission and say a prayer to enter in the forest before you're hiking and camping? I always feel yes, and you can call me Norma Jean if you want. My oldest son lived from 16 to 30 on Guam, which has an incredibly heavy jungle in the middle of the island. And he was always a very sensitive kid, and he knew to pray to the spirits that run that place to have permission to enter in there. And he never had a problem, but he rarely camped with people who didn't have one sort of story or another of, because apparently those jungles can be kind of vicious. And I know they have brown tree snakes, which his sister always throws up to him. She did not live in Guam. But it's not just brown tree snakes. There really are ancient energies in that island, and he could feel them in the trees. And the same goes for here. And I don't care. I take permission when I do my walks that I do every day, that I have a different meditation that goes with it every day. But it always starts out with permission to be here. And that means in that space. Not I have permission to be on the planet. I know that, so I don't worry about that. That's a very good question. Because it's really easy for me to answer, and I've seen it happen to someone. You get a lot of procrastinator support for the person. Yeah, and there's the mushrooms connect. You know, the largest living organism in the world that they found so far is a mycelium community that is in the Northwest, and it extends across 2 or 3 states. It's just incredible. Let's see. Okay, and can you tell me which kind of elemental will want to work with me first, if any? I'm going to throw the cards to see if I even have that ability. My thing is to communicate who they are to people, but and I'm putting together some shows on working with the elementals because they wanted me to use them more in the 9 candles, but it didn't work out that way. Okay. Now, the question is, can Nancy Jean find you an elemental? And it says yes. But you have to let go of thinking somebody else has to tell you stuff. And you have to decide to face it. Just go ahead and deal with it, because you have the heart of a very sweet person, Dale, and should be able to move with it. And it's within the realm of your own self. You already know what the elemental is. And it's learning it will not break your heart. So it says, I know. Okay. What I keep hearing is them laughing in the background, and I know whose laughter it is. It's elves. And Google elves. There's some really good books on the myths around them, because it ends up those myths are not myths. It's just like the myth of Troy was that there was a city that got destroyed in early Mediterranean history, and then a guy went out and found it. It was not a myth. It was just a story that had been told so many times people didn't know how to grapple with it. Elves, and I'll tell you about elves, they're loud. When they start to enter into your life, you'll hear noises around you that you can't quite figure out. They can be very loud. When Dr. Gale met the elves, they were riding, the lead elf was riding on a pea pod, like holding the front of the pea pod like it was a horse's mane. And they were yelling, "We're the elementals," and woke her up out of a dead sleep so she could see this ring of critters, people floating around in her bedroom. They can be loud, but they're lots of fun, and they do have a good sense of humor. And the most important thing I think to remember about elementals is they can just manifest. If they decide, oh, I don't like this dress I'm wearing, they can manifest a different sort of clothing and all that stuff. This is Mary McSorley. I want to do things and I can't make myself go. I feel totally stuck. If I don't know, I know I'm being hard on myself. Should I continue to rest? Or will I really ever start moving? Okay, there's another thing I left off my trying to get your butt in order. It's called a bitch book. It's like a gratitude journal, but the opposite. And you keep a gratitude journal and you write down all the things you're grateful for. And then you write a bitch book that you just don't share with anybody. It's your bitch book, and you can write all the things in it you want to tell yourself and to look back, and just getting it out on paper, and just getting those thoughts out of your head, putting them on paper. That will help you a great deal. And I know, Marion, I know so much going on around you. You've had a lot of stuff to put up with, girl. So also be a little kind on yourself. Roni does do little things at a time. I call it eating an elephant one bite at a time. It's a good way to look at it, because that's what it feels like. A lot of you are talking about procrastinating. Yep. And when you do finish a project or do something, you realize, I did that, and it uplifts your spirit. I mean, I pride myself in getting all my clothes into my closet within 24 hours of when they leave the dryer. So, yeah. Oh, honey, I think you're going to find out why your family doesn't talk to each other. I dealt with a situation where a sibling found out in her first pregnancy that her father wasn't her father, and she was the middle child in the family. And anyway, that's it. My cousin found out that her dad wasn't her sperm dad. Her dad was. I don't know. The one that I know of, they went and they were not. And what she chose to do is just never talk to anybody in the family about it. But, I don't know if that's more corrosive or less corrosive than having lived through it growing up and then finding out as an adult. Okay. Please hit thumbs up, like me, all that good stuff. If you want to know more about your upcoming things that are going on, let me know. I've got 6-month readings available. I've got regular readings available. Next Thursday, I'm going to do a special show. Okay. If you've been leaving them gifts, they know where they come from. They're a lot cleverer than we are. Somebody just said she'd been leaving gifts for elementals. Linda, I don't have any more time. I've got to go. But I have this. Coming this Thursday, building a grid. I did a grid reading for a lady this last Friday, and it ended up being so much fun. And so I am going to, and yesterday I pulled out all the stones, and it's going to be don't come unless you really want to learn how to build a grid, because I'm going to be showing how I pick the colors off the card. Then I look at the stones I have that are that color, and I have a lot of stones. This bag, and this one's, God, how could you be heavier? This bag are full of all the different stones that I have in the different colors, and I'm gonna have them better separated than showing them in brown paper bags by next week. But I'm gonna talk about how I look at the stones, how I figure it. This one's gonna be fun. I'll show you what the grid's gonna look like. Well, what it's based off of. Because people are always asking me, how do you build grids? How do you build grids? And a lot of it, like when we talked about the 5s today, a lot of it's numerology. This is what the grid will look like when it's finished. it will be a representation of that. Because my stones are natural, I cannot make all the little pretty swirls and things. But what's interesting about this card is its originality. And there are 7 little dots that you can see that are kind of spread all over the card. And those are a mixture of orange, red, and blues. And I have small stones. What I'll do is to make those stones, I will actually put glue stones together. And I've done that a lot on grids because I just feel moved to understand that's how the stones are merged. So that will be next Thursday. We're going to start with how do we pick that card? Then when I look at the card, what do I see? And then I'm going to have samples of the stones. And I have several different choices of Chrysocolla and Apatite and very similar blue, but the energy feels different. And I will eventually pick which one I want when I feel that that's the energy that belongs there. That's the part I can't teach you about. But I can show you what I go through to get from here to there. And it's going to be it's going to be a couple different shows to see how to finally build that grid. And then I am going to start a thing like my garden class that I have to teach people how to read the Oracle Garden on all of what goes into learning how to build a grid. And that includes the sacred geometry, the numerology, the aspects of those that I take to make that work. And I'm going to have that as a thing you can buy into. It's like a Patreon thing. And if you're part of it and you have the link to get in it, then you can get in to see it. And I'm doing it on Patreon because it's going to take so much time to put all that together. I've already spent 3 days working on that. And I really want people who want to show up to see it. And I really want I want to have it as a place I can send people to. Well, join this Patreon and you can get on and you can see it. And I'm doing it through Patreon and not through YouTube because YouTube's just continues to take more and more money. And, God bless them. They have to make a living too. But, and I'm starting to get complaints from people about the ads that they're throwing in my shows. And I have no control over that, folks. Buy premium if you don't want to see ads. And with that, I think I am goodbye and done. Oh, thank you, Madhu. You'll learn. Am I watching the debate? Oh, honey, I haven't missed a debate. Well, I kind of put a lot of the last debates when Trump was going nuts on mute. But I have real good remotes, so I can control it and see it. Yes, I will be watching it. I did a bunch of stuff with Scott on Sunday about that, and then he and I pulled out, I think most of you have probably seen it, but these are dowsing rods. And if you don't know how they work, okay, get settled. Make a yes. Okay, get back out there and get settled. What's a no? Okay, so Scott and I were playing with this, and somebody said, what kind of those sticks you're using? They're called dowsing rods, and it's a copper rod through a spindle. You can use a coat hanger. As long as it can just spin freely. These things, I have no way of controlling them. They spin freely. And we have some very interesting observations about what's going to happen in those debates. My first one is that Trump is trying to figure out every way he can do to not be there and not look like a chicken. But yeah, I still have a son who's a political consultant, and I watch all the political things. I watch them. I just don't want to take a bath in them, and I certainly don't want to put my psychic energy, except on Sunday mornings with Scott Allen. I don't want to put my psychic energies in it. It's exhausting. Politics is exhausting when you work in it. It's exhausting if you decide to live your life by it. Right now, it is so distorted. There's so many things that I see that, and I was heavy duty in it 20 years ago is when I really started. And I agree, oil painter. This is a neat show. I think the man's just, I've been around people that had lots of mini strokes. My second husband did. We didn't realize what it was, but a lot of the words he started distorting and things he started mixing up. He was dead 6 months later from having had a stroke and then finding cancer. So, and it was over a year ago that I was sitting with my youngest, who sat through that whole, is 13 when his dad died. And we were talking about it, and we were listening to Trump talk. And that's Susie, by the way, that's my youngest. And Susie said, that sounds like Dad. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I got to believe anybody who's ever been around any of that, and I'm sure there are people who have been, but there's so many, you can start to see them sort of eating at each other. It's like somebody mentioned to me that Ron Johnson from Wisconsin has virtually disappeared. I mean, he's not out in front. He's not talking about anything. He's not doing anything. There's two things that are going on when someone's doing that. And you know, since he tried to get that paperwork to Pence on the 6th, that's like, I used to be in a grand jury. That's like a big piece of evidence. This guy's involved in all this. When they shut up and they disappear, they either are cooperating or they're really, really trying to make their profile less and get out of it some other way. But the biggest thing is he's probably cooperating. Mark Meadows cooperated. That's where they got lots of stuff. And so somebody wrote me a note and said, where do you think he is? And I said, he's either cooperating or he's working out some other plan, but he can jump the border, but they'll send it back. Good. Well, I guess I'll take the rest of this afternoon and practice with my new mouse, which is so pretty. And I will get over to Patreon and see about setting up a Patreon, because I want you guys to have the information, but I just hate fighting tooth and nail with YouTube all the time. And I mean, technically their services are better in many ways, but then you still have to belong to StreamYard to bring in a lot of people. It's not cheap being a little old lady trying to make a buck on the side, let me tell you. Anyway, and I know that there's not a person in this audience that doesn't agree with that. So y'all take care, and I will be, after I build my grid with you in the afternoon, I will be getting out my popcorn. I found a source of Nerf balls, so I'll have a basket of Nerf balls. When they say something really outrageous, I throw it at the TV screen. Anyway, y'all take care, and I'll see you Thursday.